Um,
Good.
my name is Katrina. I am the events coordinator for the Toadstool Bookshop in Keene. We have sister locations in Peterborough and Nashua, New Hampshire. And this morning, rather, we are thrilled to welcome local author Norman VanCor, who's here to read from and discuss his new memoir, Swift, Silent, Deadly, which is available at all three Toadstool bookshops, and it's available at toadbooks.com too, if you'd like to buy it online and get it shipped to you, curbside, whatever you need, we're there for you. So this morning, we're here to listen to Norm. He's going to read to us from his new memoir. He's going to tell us a little bit about himself, about the book, how it came to be. Without further ado, please take it away.
Good morning. I'm very pleased to be here and speak with you. I just wish we could meet in person. I think everyone's getting tiring of this Zoom thing, but it's the best we have right now. So I'm hopeful that we can get through the next 2 or 3 months and I'll get our shots and back to whatever normal is. Let me start out by just telling everyone that this is the first book I've written. And when I started the project 2 years ago, I hadn't intended to write a book at all. What my intent was to put down on paper as a manuscript and maybe even as kind of a lengthy letter to my 2 children. I have 2 girls that live in Connecticut, both adults, and I have 3 grandchildren. Matter of fact, the youngest grandchild, I just saw a video this morning of him crawling for the first time. So that was rather exciting. But that was my intent, is to write about my experiences in Vietnam for my 2 girls and grandchildren as kind of a legacy, as something I could give them. Veterans don't talk about war. In World War II, everyone knows that all of the veterans came back from wherever they were fighting in World War II and just never talked about it. And in my book, I mentioned that in the 33 years that I got back from Vietnam until my dad passed away, we never once talked about World War II or Vietnam. So it's something I wanted to pass on to them. So I began to write. And sometimes I would write all day long. And then it would be 3 weeks later that I would say, oh yeah, I wanted to mention this, and I would pick it up again. And the first thing you know, I had 200 or 300 pages of notes and comments and so forth. And so my wife encouraged me to continue to polish it up a little bit. And a good friend of mine who's an editor and an author and has a radio talk show, John McGauley, he read it and says, my goodness, Norm, this is a book. You really need to keep going. So I said, hey, what the heck? I can present my kids with a real book. And so I did, and interviewed publishers, and it was an eye-opener of writing a book in book form with the copyrights and the images and design, and oh my goodness, it took months to go through, but it's there. I'm done, and in late December it came out in book form, Swift, Silent, Deadly, and it chronicles not any more than my time in Vietnam. It's not about boot camp and joining the Marine Corps and all of that. It starts in an airplane on my way to Vietnam, and it ends when I got off the airplane in Bradley Field in Connecticut, Bradley International Airport, to meet my family. There's one subsequent chapter entitled Camp Lejeune, and that last chapter goes through the process of me being awarded the Navy Cross on on the birthday of the 2nd Marine Division, there were 22,000 Marines in the field house, and my family was there. And matter of fact, my family was sitting with General Omar Bradley. Boy, that was a shock to see him there and sitting next to my father and having a chance to talk with him after. But it ends after I was awarded the Navy Cross and signing my name, and a few months later and leaving the Marine Corps. So that's essentially what the book is, and it chronicles from the beginning my job. I was a Recon Marine. I was picked for a recon in Camp Pendleton when we were getting ready to ship out to Vietnam. I was put in a recon unit. My job and my training was as a radio operator. And so I trained with recon and went over to Vietnam up to Quang Tri province. That was our base camp, which is just below the famous DMZ that separated North and South Vietnam. And recon is reconnaissance is the special forces of the Marine Corps. And it's similar to the Army's Ranger force. Now the most famous probably, and I think the most elite special forces of all, I believe, is the Navy SEAL. They've taken over all of the highly technical aspects of special forces and what they do, and are sent around the world, similar to what recon was. And it's my understanding that the Navy SEAL program was kind of a template from the template of the Marine Corps recon team. So recon in Vietnam consisted of a 5-man team. I was the radio operator, and we went out as a team. We lived together. We were in the same tent, later what we called a hooch. It was a one-room kind of a plywood hut off the ground with a galvanized tin roof. And we had the old-fashioned canvas scissor cots that go back to the Civil War era. As a matter of fact, I think the cot that I had actually did come from the Civil War. We did everything together. We trained together. When I got to Quang Tri, and I go through this whole thing in my book about what the team did to prepare me to be a part of the team, and what our job was: immediate action drills, how to pack a pack. We didn't have a lot of equipment. We had to kind of scrounge. We had some things from supply. I think the only new thing that I got from supply were a couple of pair of new socks and a new pair of boots that almost fit. So the rest of the stuff was kind of scrounged from whoever was leaving or whatever the circumstances. Unlike today, and I had to send home for a pair of handball gloves. Sometimes in the jungle, we would be in elephant grass, the 20-foot high grass, or we hated going in there. But there were different circumstances, and what we did is take these handball gloves and cut off the fingers of the glove up to the first knuckle, and that protected our hands. But anyway, the recon team, we got orders from G2, which is the intelligence at the base camp, which was a battalion. I was in Charlie Company, 3rd Marine Division in Quang Tri base camp. And we would get orders to go somewhere. And we would be given two maps. I carried one, the team leader carried the other. And it would have a designated area that we had to cover. And our assignment might be typically 5 days, sometimes 3, sometimes 7. We've been caught out there for 8 days with 5 days of food, so you don't eat for 3 days. But we had 5 canteens of water for 5 days. It's 100 degrees, about 100% humidity. So we were soaking wet all the time. And 1 canteen of water had to last a day. So you had to be pretty judicial on your consumption. And we taped together our cans so that they didn't rattle around in our pack. Our meals, we ate twice a day. In the morning, typically it would be a tin of canned peaches or a fruit cocktail. We didn't have any food per se. And in the evening, I might have a small tin about the size of a small tuna can of pound cake. And that was our meals, and you just dig your heel into the ground and cover up your cans. But everything was geared to be quiet. We had to do, when we're looking for bunker complex, or we're looking for troop buildup, or whatever we're sent out there to look for, we had to be very quiet, very careful. There had been recon teams that went out and never heard from again. Teams went out to look for them, never found them. So you avoid contact at all costs. You don't want to get into a situation where you're discovered, because if you're discovered, your life expectancy was measured in terms of minutes. So our whole objective is to gather information. How many, what are they doing? What do they have for supplies and that sort of, are they on the move? Are they in bunker complexes? And then go back and report our findings to intelligence. And they would either send out B-52s or a phantom run, or some such thing, that, or what we call the grunts, that was the infantry. They would send them out. And so I'm credited with 14 long range missions in Vietnam. And a long range mission means that we were outside of any help. In other words, we couldn't call in fixed wing with napalm or high explosive bombs to help us out. Certainly way outside of artillery. And when the chopper brought us in to a landing zone to begin our mission, the first thing I'd do is turn off my radio, because we had no radio contact. We were completely on our own for what the designated time period for our mission was. And there would be a prearranged helicopter landing zone, an LZ, and we would rendezvous after our mission and get picked up, and you have to be there. On a long-range mission, they don't have gas and they can't circle around. And so it was my job to call them in once I heard them, get them down and get the hell out of there. So that's typically what I did for 12 months. The long-range missions would be up to the Ho Chi Minh Trail. There would be reconnaissance reports, aerial reconnaissance reports of trucks coming down the Ho Chi Minh Trail with build-up supply depots and that sort of thing. And we had to go find them and keep away from their patrols, their listening posts, and gather intelligence, write notes and see what we could see through the binoculars, and get out. Several trips way into the DMZ. I've been in Laos, and other places that the president would never admit that where we were, but we were, and we did what we had to do to keep each other alive. That was the focus of our mission, is to get in, fulfill our mission and get out. Sometimes it was successful and sometimes not so much. We've been in firefights and we've run into the enemy. And in one instance, and it's the famous, like I talked to my kid, the famous chapter 18 in my book. There was a devastating ambush that we walked into, and I was the only one that came out of it that was not wounded. Two of the guys were killed, and I carried the other two out while conducting some war of my own with the NVA soldiers. So there's everything in the book, from what it was like living at base camp, what we did, some of our missions, many of our missions were, we'd go out for 5 days and not see a thing. And other times we saw a heck of a lot more than we'd ever want to see. So there was quite a mix of it. And it's just something I wanted to express and make sure that my kids knew and understood what I did in war. I was 20 years old when I got to Vietnam. So it was an eye-opener. I was a young guy. I was older than a lot of the guys, 18, 19 years old. I was 20. So seeing what we saw, you can well understand how, whether it's World War II or the Civil War, whatever, the profound impact war has on an individual, not only the combat individual, but society in general. And what they see now, of course, nowadays, you see a lot more, it's on TV, and we had letters sometimes once a week, sometimes it would be 3 weeks before we got a letter. There weren't any cell phones, no emails or computers or FaceTime. I say that right, FaceTime, I think. Zoom and those things. So we were isolated, and we didn't really know or hear much about home. There was kind of an unwritten thing, I guess. Everybody just kind of knew that there wouldn't be much point of me writing home to my mom and dad to tell them, yesterday we were up on the DMZ and we ambushed 2 NVA and I killed 3 of them and we had a fight. What's the point of telling them that? So I would write home and be as boring as I could and hope that they they didn't catch on that I was not telling them everything. On the other side of it, they didn't write to me or to my teammates, their families, all about the protests and all the things that were happening at home. So we had no other news except what we were hearing from our people, our folks back home. So it was a real eye-opener when we got home, and my homecoming was on a ship. Most rotating guys came home on an airplane. That we always look forward to the big silver bird, we called it. Go home on the big silver bird. And after I was put up for the Medal of Honor, the first sergeant said, Norm, I've got to take you out of the team. We're transferring you over to Headquarters Battalion. They have a need for a radio operator to operate the TSC-15 van, which patches generals from Viet Nam to Okinawa, the Pentagon. The power of the radio was unlimited. He said, we can't keep you in the team. The Marine Corps doesn't want you killed before you get your big medal. And so, excuse me. So they took me out of the jungle, and I was in Headquarters Battalion for a couple of months. And we were one of the first groups that President Nixon brought home early. So I actually left Vietnam about not quite a month, but a few weeks early. A day would have been good. Any time you can get out, that's good. The headquarters was a whole different type of Vietnam. It was just a shocker going over to headquarters, and I do have some dialogue in there about what happened to me in headquarters, which is frightening in itself. But it's all geared to my kids. Like I said, I've never written a book before, and uh, the response and the letters and the emails and the phone calls I've been getting are just so overwhelming. The wonderful comments that people have given me, it just uh, I don't know what to think. It's just wonderful. I've had one high school friend. I haven't talked to him since 1964 in high school, and he was looking for something on Amazon, and he blundered into my book, and he says, "Can that be the same Norman VanCor?" So he bought the book, and in the dust cover, it talks about Ashfield, Mass, and graduating from Southington, Connecticut High School. And he's, holy criminy. So he got in touch with me, and boy, oh boy, we've been going back and forth, and others have called and thanked me for writing. And so many people have said, the way you wrote that, Norm, I feel as if I was right there beside you, which is a big compliment, I guess, for a writer. But if Katrina, if it's all right, I might do a short reading. It's I don't know. I think it's just about 5 minutes.
That sounds
And
great. I would love it.
it's chapter 1, and I thought maybe I would read chapter 1, and that would get set the stage for the book.
Sneak preview.
Yeah, chapter 1 preview. And like I said, the book starts out on the airplane on the way to Vietnam. So it starts out cruising along at 400 miles an hour and 30,000 feet above the ground. I somehow felt safe. There was no flak, no tail gunner, no bombs to unload. It was just a quiet trip from a California air base to Da Nang, South Vietnam. It was just us, 80 guys. The one thing we had in common was that we were all Marine Corps trained killing machines on our way to kick ass until all the gook asses had been kicked. Then we'd go home. That's what I thought with my head laid back against the soft pillow. Dim lights on a dark night somewhere over the Pacific Ocean was the setting. I suddenly realized it was quiet, very quiet for a plane full of Marines. The overhead reading lights were on here and there, but no one had a book. I observed no one was asleep, although some pretended to be or wanted to be. Some guys were staring into nothing. Other guys fidgeted, and no one said a word. We all knew we were being hurled at 400 miles an hour to a destiny somewhere in a faraway land called Nam. I couldn't help but think back to the day I visited First Sergeant Clem Record right near the Greenfield Community College campus. Record was the local USMC recruiter. He lived just up the street from us in Ashfield, Massachusetts. I even kissed his daughter once, but I hope he didn't know. He was happy to see me and even jovial when I expressed my desire to join his beloved Corps. He downright loved the idea, and the paperwork was begun. I could go to Parris Island soon and become a United States Marine. Hoorah! Our descent into Da Nang was uneventful. Still no flak. We bounced around some and could hear the pounding rain beating at us like a threat. Stairs were rolled over, and a first lieutenant in a slicker barked at us to do this and that and go to the headquarters tent. I stood up straight and stretched while adjusting my nicely starched utility trousers. I adjusted my starch cover and started for the door. By God, we're here. Let's get it on, I recall thinking. All our sea bags were removed from cargo. We were told to just grab one and go. Holy shit, was it raining? I was soaked to the skin before I hit the second step and could hardly make it out to the tarmac. I had never been in rain that hard. The white starch rolled down my skin and I was left with limp and wet trousers, shirt, and cover. It was miserable. The big tent reminded me of a circus big top. It was huge and chaotic, with the ringmaster barking at full strength. Bring your orders here. Go thereafter. No grab ass. You'll be here till daybreak. Grab a bunk. Bunk? What bunk? There were several rows of sagging springs hanging from iron posts. I guess that's them. Someone remarked on the thunder. The ringmaster blared out, "That's not thunder, shit for brains. That's incoming mortar." Christ, where do they get these idiots? So, soaked to the bones and now cold, I wasn't about to flop on bare sagging springs, so I just stood there. After some time, I began to dry and the starch had glued my clothes to my skin. If I wasn't so scared, I might have laughed. I was starting to realize just where I was and why. The sound of mortar rounds didn't help. It was November 10, 1968, the Marine Corps birthday. I had no way of knowing at the time, but that night, my first night in the big top, would be the safest I would be for the next 13 months. I was very quickly going to be in harm's way. So that sets the stage, and from there, I got on a truck, and it was a 90-mile ride in the pouring rain to Quang Tri, where I began my journey as a Recon Marine in Viet Nam.
That is a very powerful opening. The image of you in the starched uniform walking out into the rain and suddenly everything that you had been expecting totally washing away with the starch. That's
I truly never
that's
had
insane.
seen rain like that. It rained so hard that it actually hurt. You know,
Oh.
it was really something.
I do have a couple of questions. The first is from Cecile, who is curious to know if DoD had to review what you wrote before you were able to publish it.
No, what I did have to do is go to the Marine Corps Patent Office, actually through my publisher. She went to the Marine Corps Patent Office, which I never knew existed. Excuse me. And had to get permission to use the Marine Corps seal. And had to get permission to use the 3rd Recon Battalion slogan in the book. And the patent office gave us a one-line disclaimer to put in the beginning of the book with a copy on the copyright page. So that's all that we had to do there. They make no claims of accepting or promoting or any of that. So the Marine Corps, that's their way of saying, you know, hey, this guy's on his own, you know, so we're giving him permission to use those images, and that's as far as it goes. And I explain him in the introduction of my book that this is not a Marine Corps story. It's not a recon story. This is my story. There's no historical research that was done. It's from my memory. And I remember seeing an old timer on TV once. They were interviewing him. They had some function. He was a World War II vet, somewhere around 100 years old. And they said, you know, do you remember all of the war? And he laughed and he says, I'm going to tell you something. When you're in war, you don't forget. You don't. And the nightmares go along with it. And yeah, I've had nightmares my whole life. And I told my wife and had a close call one time, and I said, don't ever walk up behind me. Just don't do it. I'm sorry, but I don't do it. And she did one time and tapped me on the shoulder, and I came around and thankfully I didn't hit her, but
Yeah.
there are just those things that you just can't get rid of. It's just the way it is.
I think that it was a really powerful choice for you to write this for your kids, um, because you're talking about a a war that lives in like American culture still. You know, we haven't quite forgotten about it. We don't learn it in school, but we always do learn it in school. And I think that hearing about it from someone who went through it, someone that your kids love and respect and trust, I think that's going to make it a really powerful read for them. And I think for other people too, because this is a gift to your children.
Mm.
That's, I think that's really beautiful in its own way.
Well, I don't want to, I certainly don't want to provide any promotional for Amazon, because we have, you know, the greatest bookstore in the world right here in Keene. But several people after reading the book have gone on Amazon to give comments and a rating, and holy smokes, it just their comments are are so nice. They're very generous. They're riveting, and you know, it's just little emotionally overwhelming for me.
I can imagine, yeah. If anybody else has any questions or comments, anything you'd like to say, there is a chat feature at the very bottom of the screen. Tiny little box that just says chat. Feel free to use that um, if you have any last minute questions.
Katrina, I might add that
Please.
in June, you've invited me to participate in a oh, let's hope an in-person um, reading and a discussion about the book and um, about Vietnam. You know, whatever people want to know, and I'm looking forward to that. It's just an opportunity to have eye contact, and you can relate a little bit better with folks if you can actually visit, sit down and see them, you know. So I'm looking forward to that.
We're looking forward to it too. I am so excited for the summer. You know, everything going as it is right now, it's looking like even if we can't hold it indoors, we have space outdoors. We'll be able to facilitate a book signing and really bring back that face-to-face nature of a book event. Um, Cecile also asks, do you think that things in the Marines have changed for the better, like the military providing more than just a pair of socks to you?
Oh, yeah, I guess that's true. And you know, I was talking with a couple of people, and think about this, that if you want to go way back to the Revolutionary War and go through every war that we've been involved in, way too many, but every war, if you can understand, gets a little easier. Um, it's easier on the combatants, on the people that are in there. Look at the uniforms that are provided, and the all of the equipment is more sophisticated, and the bombs are bigger and targeted, and using drones now, and the guys that are in combat in Iraq, Afghanistan, wherever they are, they have cell phones on them, and there's FaceTime at night and emails, and which makes it a lot better to be in contact with your family day and night. The food is as good as, better probably than we'll have for dinner tonight, you know, and but all of that said, they still come home with no arms and legs. War is war. But yes, the equipment and they take much better care of the veteran of the warriors, if you will, now than ever before. And the after too. I mean, coming home and at the docks and you know being ridiculed by the protesters and them throwing tomatoes and oranges and apples at us and we hate you and go back and kill yourself and baby killers. We didn't understand that. We had no idea what was happening on the dock. You know, instead of a welcome home, we just weren't welcome. And it wasn't until years later that they discovered this PTSD. What's that? You know, and World War II and all of the psychological problems that people come home from war with that were never understood. And you know, World War II and Korea, boy, he's a funny sort. You know, he came back from war and he's not quite right. And that's all that was said back then. And even for us coming home in 1969 from Viet Nam, there wasn't much, just, hey, get on with your life. And that was that. So yeah, things are better now if you have to put quotes on better, but yeah, they are.
Yeah. Norman, thank you so much for visiting us today via Zoom. I can't wait to have you again in the bookstore this summer
Yeah,
for in-person signing and some real face-to-face contact. It has been a pleasure hearing you talk about your writing, and thank you. Thank you for writing this book too, because you're right. So many people don't talk about their experiences in combat, and I totally understand why. But I think it's vital when we do have a voice that speaks on it to read about it and to listen and try and understand a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad I did. I am. Well, thank
Folks,
you all very much. I sure appreciate spending some time with you. Hope you got a little something out of it.
if you haven't already picked up your copy of the book, please come see me at Toadstool. We'll see you soon.
So long.